John Wayne Gacy, the truth buried below it began, as many American stories do, with the promise of a normal life. A boy, a family, a small home on the edge of Chicago, and a name that no one would ever forget. John Wayne Gacy, born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robinson, he seemed destined for an ordinary life. His father, a hard-working but heavy-drinking World War I veteran, ruled the home with anger and strict discipline. His mother, quiet and gentle, tried to soften the blows, both literal and emotional, that her husband delivered. From an early age, Gacy craved approval, especially from his father. But approval never came. No matter how well he behaved or how hard he tried, he was met with insults, fists, or silence. His father saw weakness as failure, and John became the target of his frustration. Neighbors remembered a polite, shy boy who smiled often, maybe too often. A smile that seemed practiced, as if it hid something fragile beneath it. He suffered from blackouts and health issues, including a heart condition that kept him from joining sports. To his father, that was yet another disappointment. But young John had something else: charm. Even in childhood, he had a way of talking to people, of making them feel comfortable. It was a skill he would later wield like a weapon. By his late teens, he sought escape, not through rebellion, but through reinvention. He volunteered, joined clubs, and made himself useful. He wore a smile even when it hurt. He learned early that when people liked you, they didn't look too closely. The smile that hid the darkness. In 1960, at age 18, Gacy left Chicago for Las Vegas. He worked briefly in an ambulance service and later in a mortuary, where his fascination with the stillness of death began to show. He slept in the embalming room, surrounded by the dead, before abruptly leaving the job. When he returned home, his family thought he was simply lost, still searching for direction. But Gacy was already learning something. That control over the living and the dead was a feeling that both comforted and excited him. By 1963, he moved to Springfield, Illinois, where he enrolled in business college. He discovered a talent for persuasion. Classmates remembered him as ambitious, always volunteering to lead. He learned to sell, not just products, but himself. In 1964, Gacy met Marilyn Myers, a woman from Waterloo, Iowa. They married that September. Her father owned a chain of KFC restaurants, and Gacy soon managed 3 of them. From the outside, it was a dream come true. Financial stability, a home in the suburbs, and a reputation as a community man. He joined the JCs, a civic organization for young businessmen, and quickly climbed the ranks. Gacy hosted gatherings, charity events, even parties where he impressed others with his charisma. But beneath the cheerful exterior, his life had already begun to split in two. While presenting himself as a model citizen, devoted husband, hard worker, upstanding JC, Gacy began to explore darker urges. Rumors spread quietly in Waterloo. Whispers about Gacy's behavior with young men, employees, sometimes boys, circulated among the JCs. At first, no one wanted to believe it. After all, he was generous, friendly, and always ready to help. But behind the laughter and charm, something was growing, a shadow he could no longer contain. In 1968, his double life began to unravel. He was accused of sexually assaulting a teenage boy, the son of a fellow JC member. Gacy denied it, calling it a smear campaign. But when a second boy came forward, the truth became harder to ignore. He was arrested and charged with sodomy. The community that had once admired him turned away. Even his wife, who had believed his every word, filed for divorce while he was in jail. Their children were taken from him. In December 1968, Gacy was sentenced to 10 years in prison at the Anamosa State Penitentiary in Iowa. His father died the following year. never forgiving him, never seeing him again. Inside prison, Gacy was not the broken man others expected. He became a model inmate, organizing events, running programs, and gaining the trust of both prisoners and guards. Even behind bars, he knew how to perform, how to charm, how to wear the mask. After just 18 months, he was released on parole for good behavior. It was June 18, 1970. He was 28 years old and free again. The world outside didn't know it yet, but John Wayne Gacy was about to become one of the most terrifying figures in American history. The boy who had once smiled to hide his pain had grown into a man who smiled to hide his crimes. A husband, a businessman, a neighbor, a man who hosted parties, volunteered for charity, and dressed as a clown to entertain children. And under his home, in the quiet suburb of Norwood Park, something unspeakable was beginning to take shape, something no one could see, but that would one day horrify the world. The double life begins. When John Wayne Gacy walked out of prison in 1970, he promised to start over. He returned to Chicago, determined to rebuild the life he'd lost. His mother, ever forgiving, helped him find a small house in the quiet suburb of Norwood Park Township, a modest one-story home with a crawl space beneath it. No one knew that crawl space would one day hold his darkest secrets. He found work as a contractor, opening a small construction business called PDM Contractors, short for painting, decorating, and maintenance. He hired local boys, often teenagers, offering them work, money, and mentorship. In their eyes, Gacy was a generous boss, the kind who gave second chances. In reality, he was carefully choosing his victims. In 1971, Gacy remarried, this time to Carol Hoff, a divorced mother of 2 daughters. Carol believed in him. She saw the charm, the drive, the sense of responsibility. He seemed stable, even affectionate. But by the time she moved into the house on 8213 West Somerdale Avenue, something already felt wrong. Gacy's mood could change in an instant. One moment he was laughing, telling jokes. The next he was distant, irritable, pacing. He spent long hours in the garage or the basement, claiming to be working on the house. Carol noticed strange smells, sharp, foul, lingering. But Gacy told her it was just a clogged drain. She believed him, because Gacy had become an expert at making people believe. During these years, Gacy's public image flourished. He joined the local Democratic Party, even had photographs taken with First Lady Rosalynn Carter in 1978. He hosted neighborhood gatherings, barbecues, and holiday events. And most famously, he became Pogo the Clown. It began innocently enough. Gacy joined a group called the Jolly Jokers, performing at hospitals and charity events. He designed his own clown persona, painting his face with exaggerated red lips, bright eyes, and a pointed smile. A smile that curved too sharply upward. To everyone around him, Pogo was a symbol of joy. But to Gacy, the costume was something else entirely. A mask that gave him power. A way to become someone unrecognizable. Someone free from consequence. By 1972, Gacy's darker impulses had returned in full force. One of his first known victims was Timothy McCoy, a 15-year-old boy he met at a bus station. Gacy offered him a place to stay for the night, promising to drive him home in the morning. Instead, by dawn, McCoy was dead, stabbed in Gacy's bedroom. Later, Gacy claimed it was self-defense. He told investigators that McCoy had come at him with a knife and that he acted to protect himself. But as he described the aftermath, his tone changed. He spoke not with guilt, but fascination. He said it was the first time he realized that death brought him excitement. He buried McCoy beneath the crawl space, and from that moment on, he would return there again and again, each time leaving another secret behind. Throughout the mid-1970s, Gacy's two lives coexisted in perfect contradiction. By day, he was the friendly contractor, the neighbor who waved from his front yard. By night, he cruised the streets, searching for young men who wouldn't be missed. Runaways, drifters, boys from bus stations or outside fast food restaurants, they became easy prey. He lured them with promises of work or money, sometimes showing a police badge to appear authoritative. Once inside his house, he used a handcuff trick, pretending to show how easily he could escape from them, only to lock the cuffs on his victims instead. Then when they were restrained, the clown's smile would fade and the real Gacy would emerge. The killings grew more frequent. In his mind, they were acts of control, of dominance, a twisted way to fill the emptiness his father had carved into him. He buried some beneath the crawl space, others in the backyard, and still others were thrown into the nearby Des Plaines River. The crawl space became crowded, the air heavy with decay. But Gacy continued to host parties upstairs, laughing with guests while the floor beneath them hid the truth. In 1976, his marriage to Carol Hoff finally collapsed. She couldn't take the mood swings, the late nights, or the foul smells that never went away. She left, taking her daughters with her. Now Gacy was alone and free to indulge his urges without restraint. That same year, several teenage boys in the Chicago area began to vanish. Most were last seen alive near Gacy's home or working for his construction company. Police began to notice the pattern, but Gacy's outward respectability always shielded him. He was the man everyone knew, the neighbor who shoveled your driveway, who volunteered at parades, who dressed as a clown for children's hospitals. No one believed he could be capable of such horror. But by 1977, the number of missing boys was growing. Parents were demanding answers, and investigators were starting to see the same name appear again and again: John Wayne Gacy. He thought he could keep the two worlds apart, the smiling neighbor above ground and the killer below. But the walls were beginning to close in. The walls close in. By 1978, John Wayne Gacy had built a life that looked almost ordinary. He was well known in his neighborhood, always smiling, always helpful. His construction business was growing. He was the man people trusted with their homes, even while he hid his own in darkness. But that same year, his world began to crumble, and it started with one name: Robert Piest. It was December 11, 1978, in the small town of Des Plaines, Illinois. Robert, a 15-year-old boy, worked at a local pharmacy. That evening, he told his mother he wanted to speak to a contractor who had mentioned a possible job, a man named John Gacy. He said he'd be right back, but Robert never returned. When he didn't come home that night, his mother knew something was wrong. Robert wasn't the kind of boy to run away. She went to the police immediately, and this time someone listened. The Des Plaines Police Department began looking into Gacy. At first, it seemed routine, just a missing person inquiry. But when detectives searched his record, they found his past conviction for sexual assault in Iowa. That changed everything. Detective Joseph Kozenjak led the investigation. He interviewed Gacy, who appeared calm and cooperative, offering information freely. He said he never met the boy, that it was all a misunderstanding. He smiled, cracked jokes, and even offered to help search. But something about him felt off. Too calm, too controlled. Detectives decided to keep watching him. They obtained a search warrant for his house on December 13, 1978. When officers entered, they were hit by a strange odor, sharp and sour. They thought it might be plumbing issues or old sewage, but it lingered. They found a few suspicious items: a clasped ring, driver's licenses belonging to other young men, and handcuffs. Nothing directly tied him to Robert Piest yet, so they couldn't arrest him. But they kept him under constant surveillance. 2 unmarked cars followed Gacy everywhere. to work, to restaurants, even when he visited friends. He tried to play along, offering them coffee and food, pretending he had nothing to hide. The more he talked, the more suspicious they became. Over the next week, the pressure mounted. Detectives interviewed former employees, neighbors, and acquaintances. Stories began to connect. Young men who worked for Gacy, who disappeared without a trace. Parents recalled last seeing their sons near his car. Meanwhile, Gacy was unraveling. He drank heavily, stayed out late, and spoke erratically. He knew the police were closing in. On December 19th, he invited friends over for dinner, acting strangely cheerful. He spoke about life, forgiveness, and death. He said things that didn't quite make sense, as if he were confessing without using the words. Finally, on December 21st, 1978, detectives obtained a second search warrant. This time, to look more deeply beneath the house. They focused on the crawl space, the area that had always drawn suspicion. When an officer lifted a few floorboards and began to dig, he uncovered something soft and unmistakable: human remains. At that moment, the illusion of John Wayne Gacy shattered completely. The man everyone thought they knew, the neighbor, the clown, the community helper, was gone. What remained was the truth he had buried beneath his own home. In the days that followed, police began the long, painful process of uncovering what lay beneath 8210 West Somerdale Avenue. They found one body, then another and another. Each discovery brought silence across the neighborhood. Families gathered outside, hoping for answers, fearing what they might hear. By the end of the excavation, 29 bodies were found beneath the crawl space and around the property. 4 more were discovered in the nearby Des Plaines River. The total would reach 33 known victims, each one someone's son, someone's child. The country was stunned. Neighbors who once waved to him in the mornings now struggled to believe they had lived beside such horror. The smiling contractor, the friendly clown, had hidden the unimaginable just feet below where he slept. Through it all, Gacy remained composed. He talked to detectives as though it were routine, describing the burials as though he were discussing home repairs. He even drew maps of where the bodies were buried. It was as if he wanted to control the story, even as it slipped away from him. On December 22, 1978, John Wayne Gacy was arrested and charged with murder. He confessed to multiple killings, but insisted that some of the deaths were accidental. He claimed he had multiple personalities, that the clown did things he couldn't control. But as investigators pieced together the timeline, it became clear every act had been deliberate. The search of his house lasted weeks. Reporters crowded the streets. Forensic teams worked tirelessly, identifying the victims one by one, giving names back to those who had been lost. When the digging stopped, what remained was a silence that hung over the neighborhood like a shadow. The truth had finally been unearthed. Not just the bodies, but the story of how one man managed to live 2 lives for so long. By the start of 1979, the world knew the name John Wayne Gacy. His arrest had stunned the nation. 33 victims, most of them young men, many still unidentified, had been found. The house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue became a crime scene that haunted Chicago for years to come. But for investigators, the work was far from over. Their next challenge was to bring Gacy to justice and to give the victims' families the answers they deserved. The trial opened on February 6, 1980, at the Cook County Criminal Court building in Chicago. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, families, curious onlookers, all trying to understand how an ordinary man could commit such extraordinary evil. Gacy's defense team didn't deny the killings. Instead, they argued that he was insane, that he suffered from multiple personalities, and that one of them, Jack, was responsible for the murders. But the prosecution had a different story to tell. They described a man who was fully aware of his actions, who planned his crimes carefully, and who took deliberate steps to conceal them. Each victim, they said, represented a choice, not a symptom. Prosecutors presented photographs, evidence from the crawl space, and Gacy's own words, his calm descriptions of burial patterns, his casual confessions. Jurors listened as experts detailed how he lured victims, controlled them, and disposed of their bodies. The sheer scale of his crimes left even seasoned officers shaken. During the trial, Gacy often smiled, joked, and spoke freely with his lawyers. At times, he seemed to enjoy the attention. But as the evidence piled up, even he seemed to realize there would be no escape. On March 12, 1980, after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: guilty on all 33 counts of murder. It was one of the fastest decisions in Illinois history for a case of that magnitude. The judge sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Gacy was moved to Menard Correctional Center, where he would remain for the next 14 years. There, he lived a strange and almost routine existence. He painted, read, and corresponded with people from around the world. He even began selling his paintings, many of them depicting clowns, from his prison cell. To those who wrote to him, he presented himself as misunderstood, even falsely accused. He blamed the media, the police, anyone but himself. Even as the evidence was overwhelming, Gacy refused to take full responsibility. In interviews, he often referred to himself in the third person. Gacy did this, Gacy said that. It was as though he wanted to separate himself from what he had done. But time moved forward, and so did justice. On May 10, 1994, after years of appeals and delays, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection at the Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. When asked for his final words, he reportedly said, "Kiss my ass." Even in death, he showed no remorse. Outside the prison, crowds gathered, some to celebrate, some to mourn, all to witness the end of a chapter that had haunted them for nearly 2 decades. When the lights dimmed that night, an era ended. But the questions remained. How could a man live 2 lives so completely? How could a clown, a neighbor, a volunteer become the embodiment of fear? The answers may never fully come, but what remains clear is this: beneath the charm, beneath the painted smile, John Wayne Gacy was a man who built his own graveyard, one victim at a time. In the years since his death, investigators, psychologists, and filmmakers have continued to examine his life. Some search for patterns, others for meaning, but perhaps the most haunting truth is that there was nothing supernatural about him. He was not a monster born. He was a man who chose his path, step by step, until there was no return. The house on West Somerdale was demolished in 1979, leaving only an empty lot. Grass now grows where the crawl space once held secrets. Children play nearby, unaware of what happened there decades ago. But memory lingers. For the families who lost their sons, the wounds never truly healed. And for those who study evil, Gacy remains a reminder that the most terrifying faces are often the ones that smile back. This is the truth buried below. If you find this video interesting, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.